Hi, this is Lauren of the Living Sussex Sleep podcast here on YouTube. We're going to talk about the events of the Ms. Foundation Awards.
So we had one really popular account that said one thing Meghan is going to do is have her mama with her, and that's very true. And so there's another person on Twitter who also said Meghan received the Women of Vision Award surrounded by her proud and adoring family. She has been on these stages for years before she met her husband. And boy, is that true. That's why I wanted to highlight that comment. I also didn't want that person's full name out there. So there you go. And so here she is. She's on the carpet with Teresa Younger. You have Meghan in the middle and Gloria Steinem. You have from left to right, their dresses are red, gold, and of course Gloria in her black long sleeve shirt, a glittery belt around the waist, and then red wide leg pants. It's kind of her look, it's her aesthetic, and so she kept that going, and you can just see everyone look so proud and happy again on this red carpet. Meghan's smile is gleaming, her hair is to one side, the dress is this beautiful jacquard, almost looking like a snakeskin pattern, and it's fabulous. So there were a number of people who were awarded this evening or that evening, and so again, this event was the 50th anniversary of the Ms. Foundation, connected to the Ms. magazine, founded by Gloria Steinem, and it honors women of vision who are described as feminist change makers, and among those people were Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, Latasha Brown, founder of Black Voters Matter. They're a great organization. They were involved in helping to, keep people engaged in Georgia with the runoff elections with Warnock and Herschel Walker. And it was an organization I also chose to support, so go Latasha. Wanda Irving, co-founder of Dr. Shallon's Maternal Action Project, so she focuses on Black maternal health. And if you are or are not aware, there is a 3 times higher mortality rate for Black women as compared to, I believe it's white women in America. So it's a very serious issue. It's a very important issue. And I think it's touched many lives. It's touched my life in one way or another. Someone out there has also been affected by that. So I just think it's really cool. These women are very much doing their thing. Next, we have Kimberly Inez McGuire, who's the executive director of Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. Then we have Olivia Juliana, strategist at Gen Z for Change, which is a grassroots organization that really tries to engage Gen Z in the issues that matter, in being involved in their communities, in voting, etc. Then you have Rebecca Brusahoff. Again, apologies if any of these names have been mispronounced. She is a public speaker and an activist supporting and promoting trans rights. So this is a really amazing group, as you can see, and these women are all about making change and making life better for women. And what's great about that, when you think about it, is that if you improve the lives of women, you improve whole communities, you improve the world. So very beautiful. About the event, Essence is quoted here in an article by Kiera Boone. Again, apologies if names are mispronounced. So it talked, the article, about Meghan, and it said Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, was praised, or specifically in her acceptance speech, praised the foundation at their award, which was held at the Ziegfeld Theater or Ziegfeld Ballroom in New York City on May 16th. So that was a Tuesday of 2023. She wore, of course, gold dress. It had a beautiful cutout at the sternum. And they made a funny quip about it, flouting protocol, because of course Meghan is, while royal, not bound by some kind of, former arbitrary rule of what protocol is or is not. And she, of course, in her speech, thanked Gloria Steinem for her sage advice and her, quote, cheeky sense of humor, and talked about her experiences living in her Cloverdale home and flipping through Ms. magazine. So we just want to look and admire the beauty again. So if you're listening to this, these are photos of Meghan on the red carpet, as well as photos with Meghan and Harry. And of course, there's the usual adoring photo of her smiling up and looking at Harry while he's looking to the camera like, yes, I did get this one. Yes, I did. Yes, and I'm proud. And so she just looks, it's really beautiful here. She's glowing, and her smile is bright as the diamonds on her wrist, and she's wearing her usual jewelry, and her earrings, I do believe, are a pair of pavé hoops, but there are whole channels and Instagram accounts that will go into further detail on the fashion. I do know that the shoe she was wearing were Tom Ford. She had a Carolina Herrera clutch, and I cannot remember the exact name of the designer. Please comment below what the name is. I would think it ends in Ortiz, but I cannot remember the first name. So if you're in the comment section or in the live chat, comment it now, make sure, so that people can see and enjoy that outfit and, go and find it for themselves. I'm sure it's sold out in some places, so check Farfetch, check everywhere, because there are internet sleuths who will find when this dress becomes available again. And also, it was really beautiful to see Meghan there, not just with her family, but also with her friends, her longtime friends. These are people she's known for over a decade, best friends from just her life before Harry. So you have Marcus Anderson, her friend Genevieve, and Jill, who is also, I believe, her agent. And this was her agent, I do believe, before Harry. But it's great to see them there supporting her, and just everybody's beaming, everybody's glowing, everybody's in a good way. So you have Marcus to the left, Genevieve also to the left, then there's Meghan and Jill. A nice close-up of her makeup, her clean, fresh makeup styling. This is a typical look from Meghan, where she's glowing, her colors are natural, the lipstick is a natural hue, just fabulous. So someone on Twitter, Thrive on Purpose, shared a photo, and it just showed as Meghan walked onto the stage, the audience was completely standing, everyone was up, but more than that, the cell phones in the audience. It looks like if you looked at concerts in like the 80s and people had their lighters in the air, it's just the whole room is full of people recording and wanting to remember that moment. And it's a really cool thing to see. The stage, for people who are just listening, is gold with little kind of pyramidal squares all over, and it has a large projector screen that says Women of Vision Award, and then it has Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex in big bold letters, and then below that hanging screen is you see Meghan, you see Gloria, and she is receiving her award as she steps to the podium. Also on stage is Teresa Younger. So let's talk about the reactions, shall we? People were going nuts over the looks, I think, especially considering that, we only get a few public appearances from Meghan, and I think she kind of follows a similar thought process to another famous individual who is A-list, and that's George Clooney, where, and if you all remember the exact quote, comment below. So I think the quote is something similar to never beg to attend an event and only go where you're invited. Essentially, he's not going to show up to just any old thing, only if his name is, on that thing. Not necessarily an award. I'm sure he'll go even if he's just nominated. But the point is, you go where you're wanted. And so Meghan very much does and embraces that as well. And boy, was she wanted, because you had articles like this one in Cosmopolitan, the one in Essence, and so many more that gushed over her. And this title from Cosmopolitan says, "These photos of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, accepting her Woman of Vision award are stunning." And indeed, Meghan was stunning. So here we see her at the podium. Her grin is massive. She looks confident. There are teleprompters, the really wonderful transparent teleprompters to either side of this podium. So she didn't need cards. And of course, she still spoke very elegantly, comfortably, and freely. There was not this sense of stress. People described her as articulate. Now, I know that word is triggering for some people, but truly, if you're just looking at the base meaning of that word, boy, did she have a way with it, those words and that speech. It was both, I think, heartfelt, again, referencing her experiences of the magazine and her mother, and that experience being exposed to that magazine.
And having these pages in our home, it signaled to me that there was just so much more than the dolled up covers and those images that you would see on the grocery store covers. It signaled to me that substance mattered. The presence of Ms. Magazine was more than a tool that I inherently learned from. It was an invitation to pay very close attention to the fact that change is just one action away.
So, according to People magazine, during her acceptance speech, Meghan thanked Steinem for the inspiration that you are, quote, "for your mentorship, your sage advice, your extraordinarily cheeky sense of humor, and your incredible friendship." She talked about the mark the magazine left on her as a child, and that it was formative for her. And she said, quote, "when I reflect on the time in my life when I was young, the imprints that were etched in my mind, I can now connect the dots in a much better way to understand how I became a young feminist and evolved into a grown activist." And I love that, the grown activist that she acknowledged herself as being. And the article goes into talking about the relationship between Steinem and how they had, get out the vote meetings to bond over, and then as well, lunch dates when Meghan was last in New York, so on. As well, it mentioned in this speech more about what Meghan said, and there's a really beautiful moment where she talks about seeing congresswomen, seeing astronauts, and the topics that it discussed were heavy hitting. They were important, about mothering, about being a working mom. And then, as she said, heavier topics such as DV and what it is to live below the poverty line, unearthing the roots of that, where it comes from, and the importance of equity. I also love that she talked about how it taught her the importance of having substance. I think for many young girls, there's that moment when you are looking and you are trying to decide who you want to be and how you want to be. And I don't think that ever stops. I think that happens multiple times in our lives as we evolve continuously. Cool to see Meghan acknowledge that there were some key points in her life where she learned, she can be more than what she looks like, or, is more than just whatever society might project onto her. And I think even still, she is living in that. Yes, so another thing that was said, and this is coming from Cosmopolitan magazine, quoting Meghan, is, "It's never too late to start." Quote, "You can be the visionary of your own life. There is still so much work to be done." And then someone, they mentioned a comment from someone on Twitter saying she is really stunning and every bit deserving of this award. And I think I couldn't agree more with that. But yes, I truly believe that it is never too late to start. And I think that is a message that anyone listening to this podcast, please remember how valuable you are. Please remember how important your voice is. And remember that regardless of what, the world says or the attacks you see on people you value parasocially or on yourself, right? It's okay to protect yourself, to stand up for yourself, and to stand up for what you believe in, and to go after what you want and what you believe in. And people are going to be made uncomfortable with that. People who love you will be made uncomfortable with that because it means that they have to grow and stretch. Do not mind them. Go after what you want. And know that there are so many people who are rooting for you, and that the Sussex Squad roots for you as well. So after her speech and after the event, we have photos of Meghan leaving the building. This was before any of the things that came later that night, which is why they are shared here in this manner. So we have people from Twitter who just really were enjoying just seeing Meghan glow. And so one commenter said, "Every time Meghan comes to New York, the silk press be pressed." And then another one said, "Meghan done da-da-da-da-da," and made a gown, queen energy. And it was just really fun to see people just really enjoying her having a great night. And you see Ms. Doria in the background and Harry as well with her and their security team. So here we have again the photos of them, Meghan with Doria and Harry, and you can see them just grinning at this point in the evening. Beautiful, and both Doria and Meghan truly having the same glow. And from what we know of how Doria raised Meghan, of course, she taught Meghan to value herself, and Meghan, in her own way, learned to value herself. And you see it in her shoulders being back as she stands up in these heels, and both her and her mother are very elegantly presented. As they were exiting, we definitely see some really great footage of them entering their black SUV at this point, and boy, do they give you a list. And shout out to whoever was in the Sussex Squad that happened to be there. I, for a moment, was like, is that Anita from My Duke and I? But of course, there's so many members of the squad, so I'll have to go and look through all of the podcasts to verify who's who. But it certainly was fantastic to see the elation with which they exited the event, and there was something really thoroughly A-list about it. And what's really cool is that A-list status is purely earned, so it can't be removed. And again, congrats to Meghan and to all of the other awardees from that evening, because you all do amazing work and help so many people in various communities, and that's commendable. So yeah, let's enjoy a little bit of that part of the evening, and then we're going to talk about the rest of that happened. Here is the full statement from Harry and Meghan's office. Quote, "Last night, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and Ms. Ragland were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians, and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved."
Breaking news right here in Manhattan. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan say they were involved in what their spokesperson describes as a near-catastrophic car chase with the paparazzi last night. Now, the couple had just attended an award ceremony. The spokesperson says that the chase lasted over 2 hours, and they nearly crashed with other drivers, pedestrians, and 2 NYPD officers. 2 law enforcement sources tell News 4 they were leaving the Ziegfeld Theater and had private security with them. They wanted to go back to where they were staying on the Upper East Side in an effort to ditch the paparazzi. At least 1 NYPD car was escorting them. They were driven across 57th Street, up and down the FDR Drive, and other streets. Then they drove to the 19th Precinct to get into another car to ditch the paparazzi.
They were overwhelmed by paparazzi. These were people in cars. These were people on motorcycles. These were people on scooters that had surrounded the vehicle in Midtown traffic. And now you've got the NYPD team, that is the protective detail, behind the principal car. And there's scooters and motorcycles running in between them, ahead of them, crossing in front of them. They're trying to create some distance, and this is becoming worse and worse. So finally, in frustration, they made a command decision of, trying to first slow down traffic, block a street, and get some distance. That didn't work because then the scooters and the motorcycles flew down the sidewalks with pedestrians scattering, no regard to law or traffic regulations or people to keep up. So they went to the 19th Precinct. That's 67th Street in Manhattan. They blocked off both ends of the street. They created basically a buffer. And then they spent some time, trying to cool down from this and say, all right, what's our strategic plan to get to the next location without bringing this entire crowd? Because the protective detail is to protect from stalkers, attackers, the things that royals and famous people have to deal with. The actual threat and the hazard had become the paparazzi. And I don't have to remind us, we all know the history of that. And that has led to terrible consequences within that family.
The Siegfried Ballroom over there? Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
And they was like paparazzi was hitting cars.
Yeah.
Trying to get a picture.
Press, paparazzis, they want to get the right shot, they want to get the right story. But public safety must always be at the forefront. The briefing I received, 2 of our officers could have been injured. New York City is different from a small town somewhere. You shouldn't be speeding anywhere, but this is a densely populated city. And I think all of us, I don't think there's many of us who don't recall how his mom died. And I think we have to be extremely responsible. I thought that was a bit reckless and irresponsible.
Harry and Meghan have made their statements. There's been a ton of media spin, and I provide an example of it as well as the definition on screen.
It seems to me that whatever you conclude about who said what, when, and how truthful it was, I think we can all agree, can't we, that if cars, and there's plenty of evidence from independent eyewitnesses who've said that cars were mounting pavements and the like, that even if somebody is injured or, God forbid, killed at a slow speed by a car mounting a pavement, whether it's one of them or a pedestrian, I think we can agree that that's a catastrophe. If you've got vehicles being blocked into streets because cars are chasing them at either end of it, moments where the car is so surrounded that you get out of it and get into another one, and again, these are things that have been independently verified by other people. Again, I think it points to whoever the tabloid and paparazzi people were following them, and I guess we'll find out in good time. It's plain and simple it's dangerous, isn't it? It's plain and simple that it's dangerous. It's plain and simple that it shouldn't be allowed to happen simply to get a photograph. Some of the reporting of it seems to me to be like, well, it's not really catastrophic, is it? Well, what do you want? A dead baby in a pushchair on the street? Someone else killed or injured in the middle of the process? Someone dying of a heart attack with the fright of it? What do you want? What do you want? Is it only truthful
if it's a crash at 90 miles an hour in a tunnel, into a pillar in a French tunnel. Is that what people want? There's something very sick at the heart of this, and yet all the focus seems to be on, well, just how truthful are the Duke and Duchess. Harry, in particular, has warned that people are going to die if this kind of behaviour doesn't stop. And I don't think he's wrong, is he? Either the hounding or the physical chasing and hounding that goes on. We've seen how hounding has led to people taking their own lives. Hounding by Tabloid has led to people taking their own lives. We've seen what it does to people's sanity. We've seen what hacking has done to people's sanity and the people they can trust or not trust, royals and others. There's something sick here, isn't there? There's something sick here.
So there was a really great analysis or an explainer by Erin Vanderhoof on Twitter. And Erin is a staff writer for Vanity Fair. She, or they, sorry for potentially misgendering, but they went on to kind of explain how the paparazzi system works and why a car chase could have lasted for 2 hours and the reasoning behind why that would make sense. So we're gonna read those right now. Quote, I am seeing a little confusion here, so I'll try to clear it up. Paps were following them for 2 hours to figure out where Meghan and Harry were staying. They were circling Manhattan, meaning the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, to avoid taking them, referring to the paparazzi, back to a friend's house, referring to the residence where Harry and Meghan were staying while in New York. A member of the public tweeted saying, but here's where I'm utterly confused. Why is he, assumedly referring to Prince Harry, in a blank cab? Erin responds, they started out in an SUV and then switched to the cab after ducking into the 19th precinct for a while. It sounds legit insane to behave this way, but any legal risk is outweighed in the minds of the photographers by the fact that a good photo of the kids could make enough for 4 years of private college tuition or more. They go on to say, in the UK, the press interest in them is huge and very, very negative. We once counted the number of stories the Daily Mail ran on Meghan during a month where she made no public appearances. It was more than 100. They continue, the economics of the industry are such that regular pictures don't really sell, but an exclusive of them in a private setting, like exiting a friend's apartment building in casual clothes, could be worth a bunch. They, on the other hand, have legit stalkers. One got arrested at their house just this week and have good reasons not to publicize their location. Other people might have just given up after a little while. Erin explains or summarizes the economic demand that is being presented for images of the Sussex, essentially caught unaware, where they are not in a prepared setting. Typically, if you're familiar with, what the gossip landscape looks like, as Erin states here, with negative coverage comes this demand by these publications for imagery that would be negative. And typically, in order to elicit that kind of response, paparazzi will engage in dangerous tactics, make the subject of their photos uncomfortable by doing things like continuously chasing them or hurling insults at them, saying potentially dangerous things or prying into their personal life very loudly, being very close to them, invading their space, and just generally behaving in, quote, as Erin says, an insane manner, right? Insane to behave this way, right? But unfortunately, when you are talking about the economics of the situation, one member of the squad explained that demand as well, stating, quote, the only people that buy those types of pictures are British media, so it doesn't really matter where they are in the world, referring to the Sussexes. The British media will create the demand. Again, we live in an interconnected world. There is Wi-Fi. There is all kind of demand. There is a 24/7 cycle because the internet never closes. And Harry and Meghan, being both royals and A-list public figures who have very, very big footprints as it pertains to the public interest in them and the way that their actions become, take over the zeitgeist. There is a massive demand by these tabloids to essentially get photos that kind of beef up these negative stories, that gin up the public's ire. And unfortunately, for most people in the public, they are not aware, again, of these kind of economic incentives. They are taking these newspapers at their word, and they oftentimes will believe what they read, because it's very common. You'll see this happening anywhere where there are economic disparities. People at either outlier extreme end of the economic spectrum are often dehumanized. So you'll see that with people who are living in severe poverty or below the poverty line. There is this idea by some that those individuals have made bad life choices, that they've done something, and therefore it is projected onto them that they deserve to be where they are and to not be helped or supported. And oftentimes they are depicted, you see it in media, visually, you see it in again, just the way that people are talked about and discussed, both online and in the offline world, as less than human, often described as a they, instead of as individuals with unique stories, experiences, and oftentimes just people who, like any other human being, have a series of circumstances that they may have fallen into, even despite their best efforts. And you see, on the opposite end of the spectrum, that same dehumanizing for people who are considered highly privileged, perhaps part of the 0.1%, the 1% to the smaller and smaller. Very often it's these individuals are so privileged, they don't suffer. Why should I care about saying anything mean to them on their social media or hurling insults at them? They can go home, they're rich. As though money makes nerve endings not active, as though human beings don't feel once their bank account hits a certain level. It's potentially a human nature thing, but I choose to believe that humans can be elevated and not just go by nature, but by thought and conscious choice and action, to look at the people who might experience circumstances different from their own as human beings just like themselves. Now, I know that people will say that's kumbaya, and believe me, I know it sounds kumbaya, but the honest truth is that the reason these tabloids are out here, writing such negative stories. One, there are the prejudices, biases, and, other evil, machinations or purposes why the institutions themselves will print these negative things. There's also, by the press, an understanding of the idea that human beings will pay attention to the negative before they will ever look at the positive. If it bleeds, it leads is a saying and cliche for a reason. It is the human instinct to check for threat before checking for benevolence or for friend. And again, by appealing to a base instinct and not a higher instinct, these tabloid members of the press are they're getting to avoid the onus of making more sophisticated points that are more deeply understood, having nuanced analysis of public figures that is fair to multiple perspectives and owing to facts. Instead, by appealing to people's desire to have an other that they can project their frustrations, hatreds, prejudices, jealousies, envies onto, they lock into something that doesn't require a lot to create an addiction to the adrenaline of anger and so on and so forth. Now, of course, I'm not a psychologist. Please verify those dynamics. Do not quote me on that. This is an economic decision, but it's also fueled by prejudice, hate, envies, jealousies, people who have political agendas, because royals, regardless of whether or not they are formally seen or legally seen as having political power, are still considered by many in the world as being representatives of a nation, an identity, an ideology. And when you have that kind of projection and identity with these figures, you'll find there are those us and them individuals who, if they are not of a healthy mindset, are going to go further than just reading something and making anywhere from pithy to straight up hateful commentary to acting on it by pursuing that potential 4-year college tuition sized 100,000 to $250,000 sized or more photo. These paparazzi are feeding the tabloid beast that is going, we want our bottom line, we want to make top dollar, and whoever we have to mow down in the process. I say that, of course, as a figure of speech and solely as opinion. They allegedly will do. Another member of the public did a great job of kind of summarizing the demand and saying the only people that buy those pictures are British media, so it doesn't really matter where they, meaning the Sussexes, are in the world, the British media will create the demand. Think about that. When someone leaves, they're indicating that they do not consent to continued engagement. Now, to be pursued, not just as you are within country, but as you have moved continents, countries, and you are, generally spending your time going about your business, which is charitable work. Again, the very reason that the Sussexes were out that night. And you are essentially not engaging in anything that could be considered out of the realm of your professional duties. And to be continuously pursued like this is essentially breaking boundaries. This is crossing boundaries, crossing established lines of I do not consent. And so this behavior, it's wrong. And this economic model is one that incentivizes the worst possible behavior. And all of this in light of what Harry has experienced within his own family with the late Princess Diana of Wales is in some ways unconscionable in pretty much all ways, in my opinion. On Twitter, another member of the public very well summed up what could be an explainer for why any institution would sanction this kind of reckless paparazzi behavior. And they tweet at the top of the page here. You can see, they say, if you betray your caste, referring to hierarchical systems for organizing society with certain people of most privilege at the top and the people of least privilege and usually most poverty and suffering and disdain at the bottom. And of course, this arises in different societies with different histories, but it is something that is seen. So if you betray your caste, the system you walk away from will keep coming after you. Why? Because you indict their snobbery and arrogance and unearned privilege. Your life is a living condemnation. They cannot abide it no matter who you are. And so one could imagine that potentially explains what many of us read in Harry's book Spare, when you see the way that they responded to Harry's decisions for his family, for his life, for his wife, this attacking to try and claw him back and hunting to pursue. And in many ways, it does look like stalking. It does look like an attempt to go after that family, the Sussexes, because what are they showing? They are potentially showing you can be royalty without being publicly funded. They are potentially showing you can be likable and be royalty and work for a living, that you can be royalty and not be born into it and still do it well. They're potentially showing that you can still be of high caliber, high status, and worthy of being treated like royalty without being actually labeled as royalty, or that you can potentially not be born to it, not be raised in it, not be a part of any aristocracy, and still have public appeal and be good at the job. And on top of that, that you can be born into it and not like it, that it may not be what you want, and perhaps it isn't a beautiful privilege, but instead a potentially terrible cage, right? That is potentially what Harry and Meghan can be seen as representing for individuals invested in the hierarchy of British society, their caste system. As someone who is not a citizen of the UK, there may entirely be a different understanding of that structure and experience, but I can only speak from my own experiences. This commenter made a great point, and you see this in groups that have any kind of social organization, whether it be a nation with, a caste system, or it could be a religious or cult entity. And they'll have a hierarchy with people at the top, people at the bottom, and people who leave or escape are hunted down, made to suffer, they're stalked. Various accounts with different cults experiencing very abusive and toxic harassment and bullying and even physical harm. This isn't a simple situation. This is a very powerful set of dynamics. And as people who look on and may not be themselves members of highly exposed groups or may not be highly exposed public figures, it can be very much alien to think that what is being seen, having photos and pictures taken, is some kind of negative thing. But do remember that if you've ever had a family member take out their cell phone and want to take a picture of you when you are at home and you didn't expect it, or you're out even at an event, right? And if you've ever been like, oh, no. Now imagine that on a global scale and you can't escape it because they are hunting you to the ends of the earth. It is not a healthy thing, and it is not normal, despite what members of tabloid press may want us to think. And then another tweet by Unstoppable Shy, aka #Brazen Hussy. Hello. They comment, and I posted this disjointed from the previous tweet because I do not remember if this was in response to the previously read tweet. This 100%. Quote, they want Harry subdued and returned to the fold where they can put him in some minor role on a short leash and regularly serve him up to the media as easy fodder. It's disgusting. And, I would have to say I concur with the opinion that this is disgusting. We're all better than this. And there is journalistic integrity, and there are many members of the press who do not behave like this. And I think these handfuls of really powerful and well-funded tabloids are doing a disservice to the reputation of news and journalism and the press.
And how do you think this story now contributes to what has been, a pretty unhealthy relationship with the press?
I mean, it's something we've heard Prince Harry talk about time and time again, his fear of history repeating itself. And obviously this event last night is exactly one of those moments that he would have no doubt dreaded his entire life. It's sort of straight out of Princess Diana's story, really, this kind of situation they're involved in. And I think for the couple, it was sort of almost confusing why it was even happening, because they had given a moment to the paparazzi outside the venue. Lots of pictures had been taken. They had sort of given everything out that evening. And so for this then to continue as we've heard, over a 2-hour period, which of course includes some stopping at a police station for some time. I believe that this wasn't just a continuous 2-hour chase. I think for them, they're very sort of keen on highlighting just sort of what kind of lines are crossed. You know, we've obviously heard over a number of court cases about how Harry's life has been interfered in other ways through media, phone hacking, private investigators poking into various parts of his life. This is another aspect of that press intrusion, that media harassment that they're so keen to highlight and hopefully put a stop to.
But the way I saw them follow the car, I wasn't surprised by the headlines. And it became pretty aggressive. The paparazzi had access to the garage from where they were entering, and they were being kind of manhandled by the bodyguards to prevent them from getting too close to the Sussexes. And the entire time, a lot of the paparazzi were heckling Meghan and Harry and making just negative comments, trying to get a reaction out of them. And then as they were leaving, just the way they chased the car, it just reminds you of like all the other scenes you've seen in the past with Prince Harry's mother. And it was just really upsetting. If it was triggering for me, I can't even imagine how it must have felt for them to actually experience something like that. Well, this is the reason why we're there, to support the Sussexes, because we know how much negativity does surround them. So we don't want them to come out and only hear negative things. We want them to come out and hear that they have supporters as well here in the US.
How do you feel about being part of two broken families?
We know that these paparazzi photos were taken, and there have been attempts to basically hide that truth, and we go into on this screen the different tactics, the reasons why they're done, and what all of this is about, which is playing a semantics game, trying to coerce the Sussexes into an action that they have not agreed to, and essentially targeting the couple. You have witness intimidation, and remember, all of this is occurring with the context of the media investigation that is ongoing with the UK tabloid press, and they are being called out. So let's not fear, the Sussexes will win. Anyway, how are you all doing today? Comment below your thoughts on this past week's events, and I'll see you in the next video right now.